rural polity, changing rural power structure after 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment. Introduction. The Indian village is changing. During its long journey through the colonial and post-colonial periods, almost nothing has remained the same in the village society of India. In 1975, the pioneer anthropologist of India, M. N. Srinivas, observed profound changes taking place in Rampura village when he revisited the village after a gap of 20 years. Further, he commented that it looks as though the day was not far off when Rampura would be a dormitory of Mysore. In recent times, things have changed in such a fashion that one Indian scholar argues that the Indian village is vanishing, that is, shrinking as sociological reality, though it still exists as a space. The changes in the village society in India have probably been more spectacular during the last 3 decades due to extensive governmental intervention in the form of land reforms and democratic decentralization. The 10th five-year plan highlighted the importance of governance for tackling the problems of poverty, backwardness, and low human development, and pointed out the importance of embarking on comprehensive governance related reforms agenda. A multifaceted approach was adopted with particular emphasis being laid on the implementation of the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts 1992, which gave constitutional status to Panchayati Raj institutions and urban local bodies respectively in both letter and spirit in order to bring about greater decentralization and increase the involvement of the community in planning and implementation of schemes and thus increase accountability. Now let us discuss about the objectives of this lesson. Number 1, to understand the power structure of Indian villages. Number 2, to analyze the features of politics in rural society. Number 3, to understand 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendments. Number 4, to discuss the changes in village power structure and leadership after 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment. Now let us discuss about the power structure of Indian villages. Who holds power in the villages? What was the traditional power structure and what is the new power structure that has emerged? The power holders in Indian villages can be classified as: number 1, those who have power based on the ownership and control of land. Number 2, those who have power based on their caste. Number 3, those who have power based on numerical strength. And number 4, those who have power because of the position they hold. For example, in panchayats, etc. In the traditional power system, the main dimensions of power system were the zamindari system, the caste system, and the village panchayat. The villagers referred their social, economic, and other problems either to the zamindar or to their caste leader or to the village panchayat. In a state like Rajasthan, traditional power structure was feudalistic. In other states also, Jamindari was hereditary. The Jagirdari and Jamindari systems were in fact land revenue systems. The kings granted lands to their favorite chosen men like ministers, courtiers and military commanders, etc. The Jagirs were bigger estates than the Jamindars. The Jagirdar was an intermediary between the tiller of the soil and the state, but he behaved practically as the owner of the land in respect of peasants. He collected revenue from peasants for their support and also of the military force which he maintained. The Jamindars were big landlords but possessed no title. The Jagirdars levied number of taxes and took a great portion of the produce as land revenue. They discouraged reforms and social awakening. The Jamindars were those who were assigned land by the feudal chiefs and had to pay tribute to the ruler. They used to give their land to tenants whom they exploited in every respect. Thus, ownership of land and their economic status were the fundamental sources of Jagirdars and Jamindars' power in a village. The caste leaders had social status in a village. Since caste councils were very powerful through severest sanctions, they could even ostracize defaulters from the caste. The leaders enjoyed great power over members. The village panchayats consisted of village elders from amongst all the major castes in the village. These were informal organizations. The members gathered whenever issues involving the interests of the village were to be decided. After independence, the Jagirdari and Jamindari systems were abolished and many land reforms were introduced which weakened the traditional power structure and created a new power structure. In place of hereditary and caste leaders, elected persons with political backing became leaders. Individual merit and not caste or class became an important factor in leadership. Now let us discuss about the features of politics in rural society. In rural sociology, the study of the political structure and organization of villages has significant importance in order to have clarity about the rural society. After independence, for the purpose of decentralization of power, several institutions like Gram Sabhas, Panchayats were established in villages. Apart from these, many other democratic institutions were also set up. Adult suffrage, which has given the right to vote to every citizen, brought about a new change in village politics. Various constitutional and legislative measures have enabled the participation of the weaker sections of villages. They are now able to send their representatives to the state legislative assemblies and also to the parliament. The elections being conducted for Gram Panchayat have made the village people interested in rural politics. The prominent features of politics in rural society are: number 1, administrative setup and decentralization of power. Number 2, role and importance of political parties in rural society. Number 3, local village politics. Now let us elaborate these 3 points. The first one is administrative setup and decentralization of power. One of the main objectives of Indian government after achieving independence is the decentralization of power in order to enable the participation of Indian population in political matters and administrative setup. As India is a large country, decentralization of power is a better alternative. Such need has led to the establishment of two types of institutions that are like this. Number one, the institutions at the level of local self-government such as Gram Sabha, village panchayat, etc. The main objective of the establishment of local self-government institutions is to provide training to the local people in the art of democracy and self-rule. Local bodies such as village panchayat, village courts are intended to provide justice quickly to the villagers instead of running about the courts in towns and cities in cases of litigation. The members of these bodies are elected directly on the basis of adult suffrage. In order to supervise and guide these members, certain officials such as assistant development officers, district magistrate, planning, block development officers, etc. were appointed by the government. The provisions of the acts authorize the government to act through these officials to suspend or dissolve these institutions of local self-government. This is the reason that the elected representatives of these institutions look to these officials as their bosses. This creates a lot of interference in the working of the local self-government institutions, which in turn create lot of problems. Number two, the official administrative setup involves officials such as Chowkidar, Patwar, etc. This official administrative setup is responsible for the maintaining law and order, revenue collection and implementation of various governmental programs. This administrative setup consists of a large number of officials such as Tahsildar, officials of the irrigation department and such other authorities. These officials are responsible to their higher officials in carrying out their duties, and they do not recognize the authority of the elected representatives. They carry on their duties independently on their own. At this point, there occurs a clash between these two officials. Elected people are not able to carry out their duties without the interference of these officials. Such situations create a number of problems which can even result in factionalism, and the very purpose of having decentralization of administration is lost. There must be cohesion between these two bodies. In addition, freedom given to work independently will be helpful in the successful decentralization of administration in villages. Then second important aspect is role and importance of political parties in rural society. The working of the political parties also underwent a change in the villages after independence. The working of certain parties also created factions in few villages. In many villages, certain caste supports certain political party, and this result in formation of factions on the basis of caste. Such factions create caste rivalry and also affect the functioning of institutions of local self-government in villages. Then third aspect is local village politics. The village politics are generally influenced, dominated and guided by the caste and creed. Due to the dominance of caste system in villages, the political parties and factions are also formed on the basis of caste. In villages, faction groups are formed as they have their following of various castes. The leader of the faction group is the most prominent person of the caste to which he belongs. Such groups are formed in order to serve interests of local village politics. Due to lack of proper education and political training among villagers, local politics play an important role. It influences the working of the political parties and political behavior of people. However, the situation of the rural politics has undergone a change after independence. Some changes are taking place considerably in healthy directions, while certain others are driving towards undesirable directions of violence. The power structure of the village community is also undergoing a change. Now let us discuss about the content of the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments. The 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments give recognition and protection to local governments, and in addition, each state has its own local government legislation. 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments were passed by Parliament in December 1992. Through these amendments, local self-governance was introduced in rural and urban India. The acts came into force as the Constitution 73rd Amendment Act 1992 on April 24th, 1993 and the Constitution 74th Amendment Act 1992 on June 1st, 1993. These amendments added two new parts to the Constitution, namely 73rd Amendment added Part 9 titled the Panchayats, and 74th Amendment added Part 9A titled the Municipalities. The local bodies such as Panchayats and municipalities came under Part 9 and Part 9A of the Constitution after more than 6 decades of India becoming a republic. Salient features of the 73rd and 74th Constitution Amendment Acts: Panchayats and municipalities will be institutions of self-government. The basic units of democratic systems are like Gram Sabhas at village level and ward committees at municipalities, comprising all the adult members registered as voters. Three-tier system of panchayats at village, intermediate, block or taluk or mandal and district levels, except in states with population is below 20 lakhs. This is according to Article 243B. Seats at all levels to be filled by direct elections. This is according to Article 243C, Clause 2. Then seats reserved for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, and chairpersons of the panchayats at all levels also shall be reserved for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in proportion to their population. 1/3 of the total number of seats to be reserved for women. 1/3 of the seats reserved for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes also reserved for women. 1/3 offices of chairpersons at all levels reserved for women. This is according to Article 243D. Uniform 5-year term and elections to constitute new bodies to be completed before the expiry of the term. In the event of dissolution, elections compulsorily within 6 months. This is according to Article 243E. Next point is Independent Election Commission in each state for superintendence, direction and control of the electoral rolls. This is according to Article 243K. Panchayats to prepare plans for economic development and social justice in respect of subjects as devolved by law to the various levels of panchayats, including the subjects as illustrated in 11th schedule. This is according to Article 243G. 74th Amendment provides for a district planning committee to consolidate the plans prepared by panchayats and municipalities. This is according to Article 243ZD. Funds, budgetary allocation from state governments, share of revenue of certain taxes, collection and retention of the revenue it raises, central government programs and grants, Union Finance Commission grants. All these are according to the Article 243H. The next point is establish a finance commission in each state to determine the principles on the basis of which adequate financial resources would be ensured for panchayats and municipalities. This is according to Article 243I. Now let us discuss about the changes in village power structure and leadership after 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment and some observations. Marginal changes of adaptive nature have occurred in power structure and leadership in villages after gaining independence due to various factors. There are some observations made regarding the functioning of Panchayati Raj institutions after 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment. It has been observed that there is a wide gap between theory and practice in implementation. Assets have been created under the various rural development programs, but assets were not being utilized properly. Primary schools have been built, but children are not going to schools, and in some cases there are no staff. Community development scheme is a total failure because the people want that each and everything should be done by Sarpanch. It was found that beneficiaries for rural development programs are not selected in proper manner. It is supposed to be selected in according to baseline survey. This baseline survey contains the names of those families are not included in the record available at block and DRDA office. The list contains taxpayers as beneficiaries are the sufferers. With regard to loans and subsidy, it was found that the total amount of loan is never given to beneficiary. So far as the meetings of Panchayat Raj bodies are concerned, it is found regular. But meeting of Gram Sabha in all the 3 districts are not held regularly, and even if they are held, the adult members of the village do not attend them. According to the provisions of the new Act, 29 items have been given to the panchayats. But it has been noted that very few of these subjects have been transferred to the panchayats and are neither substantial nor meaningful. They are only supervisory in nature. It was also found that the ex-sarpanches, with the help of the MLAs of the local area, try to intervene in the working and functioning of the district panchayat committees. With regard to the functioning of DPC, District Planning Committee, it was found that the most of the beneficiaries, people's representatives, and even some of the officials are not aware of the constitution, composition and structure of the District Planning Committee. It was found that still MPs and MLAs are still controlling the Panchayat Raj institutions. They get development work done in their area, and as such the needy and the remote village get neglected and remain underdeveloped. Their dominance are also seen with regard to giving grant to panchayats. They are giving grants to only those panchayats which are dear to them. It was observed that due to the dominance of the MLAs and MPs and black development officers come Panchayat Raj officer and their subordinate staff virtually dominates over even upon the articulate representatives of the Gram Panchayats. Ex-sarpanches, with the help of the MLAs of the area, try to intervene in the working and functioning of the sarpanches, especially the women sarpanch. With regard to the functioning of the District Planning Committee, it was found that the most of the beneficiaries, people's representatives and even some of the officials are not aware of the composition, constitution and structure of the DPC. With regard to women's participation in the affairs of the panchayats, it was found that maximum number of them are still working on the advice of the male members of the family. Summary. In a nutshell, it can be said that the passing of the 73rd and 74th Amendment has improved local self-government and urban local bodies in the country vastly. The ethos of democracy can find real nourishment only when power reaches the grassroots level. For the ordinary citizen, it is local democracy which can have real meaning and significance. In a vast country where large masses are still unlettered, village panchayats and participative democracy can do wonders. If the aim is to establish a democratic society where change is brought about by voluntary consent and willing cooperation and not by the force of arms, there may be no alternative to Panchayati Raj or local self-government institutions. In that sense, the most revolutionary measures in recent decades have been the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments, and we hope that with this Indian democracy could become a unique model for the rest of the world.